squished in over there, and we've got all this room.
Good afternoon. I would like to welcome you to the joint City of Sioux Falls Council and Minnehaha County Commission meeting. I'd like you to start with the roll call, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Tamara, are you doing that, or Cindy, or which one have you got?
For the city, council members Aguilar.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Entenmann.
Here.
Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Rolfing.
Here.
Stagers. Mayor Huther.
And for the County Commission?
Benego.
Here.
Heiberger. Here. Barth.
Here.
Kelly.
Here.
Peckus.
Oh, that even works over there?
And we have a quorum. Now I'd like you to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We need a motion to approve the agenda for this afternoon.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes. And on behalf of the city,
So moved for Erpenbach.
Second, Karski.
There's been a motion to approve the agenda on behalf of the city by Councilor Erpenbach, seconded by Councilor Dean Karski. If we could have a roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Stagers.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0.
thank you. We'll move into the agenda. And Cindy, if you'd read the first item, please.
The first item is consider a resolution appointing Tom Wingert, Commissioner Cindy Heiberger, and Jim Mayer to the Homeless Advisory Board. Stacy Teason.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me be here. As she said, I'm Stacy Teason. I'm the coordinator for the Homeless Advisory Board, and today we'd just like to make some movements on our board. And first, we'd start with Tom Wingert. Tom has served for 8 years on the St. Francis board and has termed out. And spent some time with Tom when we were talking about working on the warming center. And so just kind of got a good feel for Tom and his knowledge of the community. And so I asked him if he'd be interested in continuing his work on the homeless population in Sioux Falls, and he was enthusiastic about that. So we took it to the board, and they were unanimous about appointing Tom to the board. So we'd like to ask you to consider Tom Wingert to replace Jesse Vavrick on the board. Cindy Heiberger, Commissioner Heiberger, is replacing Commissioner Barth as the liaison. We welcome Cindy, and we're very excited to have her on board. Commissioner Barth has been an excellent advocate and done a great job, and very much pleased with his participation and assistance in helping me move things forward. And then lastly, we just want to make sure that we keep Jim with us. Jim Myers has been our board chair for the last 2 years, and his term has expired, so we just want to reappoint him for his final term for 3 years. So I'll just ask that you look at this and consider all of them. All of the three the board has approved to continue with, so I'd appreciate your approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I think Commissioner Heiberger has already been approved by the county, so that's a shoe-in. Do we need to approve Tom and Jim?
And Jim, yeah.
Okay.
A motion to approve those appointments.
Thank you. We have a second? We have a motion and a second to approve the two individuals who have been appointed or been nominated. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes.
On behalf of the city, would anybody want to make a motion to approve this item?
So move, Anderson.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made that motion, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Aguilar.
Yes.
Anderson. Entenmann.
Yes.
Erpenbach.
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski.
Yes.
Rolfing.
Yes.
Stagers.
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 2.
Item 2 is the Homeless Advisory Board report from Ending Homelessness Conference. Carol Muller and Stacy Teason.
I have a PowerPoint, so I don't know how you guys bring it up. It's on the laptop. You guys all have it?
Do we have some technical assistance?
Thanks, Jim.
Good evening. Carol Muller, Minnehaha County Human Services, and last month Stacy Teason and I went to Seattle for the Ending Homelessness Conference, and we were just very, very pleased with attending that conference. And we know that both of your entities are very invested and concerned and passionate about homelessness and the issues that affect our families here. And we wanted to provide a short summary of the couple days that we spent with a lot of workshops, because we came out with some great innovative ideas and thoughts and concepts and challenges to us. So we wanted to bring that forward. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and let Stacy start. I thought I went forward. I will let you handle that.
All right, thank you all. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about this, and I know I'll probably talk too fast, so I'll slow myself down. But this was an amazing opportunity for me to be able to go to Seattle and learn things. There were 900 people at this conference and from all over the country. So just being able to be in a room full of people who were all advocating for the same concept, which is ending homelessness. So I came back with a whole bunch of terms and compared what we've been doing in Sioux Falls to what's going on a national level. And really, I would just like to say that the Homeless Advisory Board and the community as a whole is really doing some of the right things, but there's always so much more to do. And if we truly say that our goal is about ending homelessness, then we have to take a step back and look at some of these things and say, what is it that we're really talking about? So with that in mind, a lot of times when people come into the shelters or come in for assistance, they find themselves being asked, what's wrong? What did you do? How did you mess this up? And maybe it's phrased more nicely, but the bottom line is we focus more on the negatives. And so we try to put our plan into place focused on those deficiencies instead of focusing on those strengths. And really what we'd like to do as a community then is move it forward as focusing more on strengths. What are we doing right? How do we help you sustain the changes that you'd like to make, not what do I think you need to do? And so focusing it on an overall approach as a solution-based, strengths-based approach. And so that's where we would like to start the groundwork, but then we move forward with coordinated assessment. It sounds really fancy. Hospitals do it, places all over the country do it. Coordinated assessment means basically that we have one way for you to come into the system, and everyone's operating at the same way, at the same time, at the same level, with the same amount of services and resources available to them. And we don't do that right now. We have a lot of agencies all doing things that they want to do, which isn't right or wrong necessarily. It's just that we could be more efficient. We could do it better. So talking about coordinated assessment gets you into all of these other things. Centralized intake. How do we have one place that families go or individuals go that are experiencing homelessness? We have the St. Francis House, we have Union Gospel Mission, we have the warming site that's open for a couple more weeks. We have Children's Inn, we have services, but we don't all talk to each other and we don't necessarily know who's going where, who's got what, and if this family's been served elsewhere. So having a system in place that would be able to authorize that, lots of communities use their 211 system. So could we do that? Everything's possible. I've talked to Janet. There's always possibilities. It's just a matter of funding. But creating that centralized intake process so we really have a good grasp of what's going on in our community. Prevention and diversion, two words that I love. Prevention means we kept you from getting homeless in the first place. So something came up, maybe you lost your job, maybe you got injured, you can't pay the rent, the landlord's breathing down your neck, you need to find a solution. You can call this number, you're going to get help, we're going to figure out how to help you. Diversion means, whoops, you already are evicted or you've lost your housing, so you're showing up at the shelter door, and we're going to try and get you out of the shelter as fast as possible. So diverting you from a long-term homeless process. We really want to do that. That'd be something really amazing for us to figure out how to do. So this is a priority for me. A vulnerability index. Hennepin County in Minneapolis uses it. All over the country, big cities use it. We don't use it here. A vulnerability index is basically saying, on a scale of 1 to 5, what are your barriers? What's your problem? And can we move you through quicker if you have less needs? So someone who's experiencing a domestic violence situation, who's got a really abusive partner, would probably score a 4. One of our guys staying at the Safe Home program would score a 5. Chronically homeless, lots of issues, but someone who really did just lose their job, we could get through pretty quick, so a minimum amount of barriers. So being able to assess, really going through that whole process, because a lot of times people get lost and they get shuffled. We have families at the Arena Motel, we have families at the Sioux Falls Inn. Do we know where these families are? Is everybody talking to each other? Do families know who they should be talking to? And we see those lovely little bumper stickers, so the 211 gets to be a great resource, but not everybody knows about it. We have those helping hand resource guides we talked about earlier, also a great avenue, but again, that's not necessarily connecting people into the system and how we would want to funnel them through. So really putting all of these pieces into place, housing prioritization. Sioux Falls Housing used to do it a long time ago, moving people who were homeless, people who were victims of domestic violence to the top of the list. As many of you know, that wait list is over 4 years long. With the federal sequestration stuff coming forward, that wait list could become 5 years. They're still kind of out there trying to figure out the data on that, but we could lose between 15 and 127 housing vouchers in our community. So that's potentially 127 families that could become homeless because those vouchers would go away. So they should move to the top of the list. We don't prioritize situations necessarily. It's kind of a first come, first serve, and people who show up at your doorstep. So being able to put all of the cogs in place in collaboration with community partners. Oh, what a great idea. Working with our landlords. Sat through presentation after presentation where their vacancy rates are even lower than ours. Our vacancy rate as of January was about 4% for rental units. In San Francisco, it's less than 1%. So they've had to be really creative with finding ways to be able to house their individuals. We also need to be that creative because our landlords can be very, very selective. And when we talk about what we have available for affordable housing, we really don't have $350 to $450 apartment units that are safe, that are decent. So being able to put that all together and then working with our funders. Sat through an awesome presentation at the Rotary yesterday. The woman from the Bush Foundation talked about being creative with your funding, making sure it stretches. How do you do that? And so all of this, to me, if you put all of these pieces together, really are about using our community dollars in the best way possible. And so I would highly encourage us to do that. And progressive engagement's a fancy term for making sure that we're not throwing more at you than what you really need. So if you're out there and you're looking for a job and I say I'm going to help you for the next 6 months, but you find a job tomorrow, but I'm still providing you assistance, that doesn't make any sense. But we have programs out there in the community that want to do the right thing, that think that it's about building relationships and keeping you needing things. And it isn't. And we'll talk about that on a slide down the way. And then outcome measures. Who doesn't want to know about outcomes? How well are we doing? The Homeless Advisory Board's been around for 7 years. We have a 10-year plan that's almost into its 8th year. We haven't ended homelessness yet in the city of Sioux Falls. But how are we tracking that? I get some data. I have that lovely little snapshot that you guys have seen. How do we get everyone on board? We have a homeless management information system that's available. The state has it. Not every agency uses it. It doesn't track data necessarily very well. But it's out there. It's something we could be using. So really focusing on outcomes and positives and wrapping it all the way around to make sure that we're really focusing on our strengths. So
one of the things that they talked about at the conference is that we need to talk about how we enter people into the system, but we also at the same time need to talk about how we exit people out of the system. And I think that's a really important term for us to do. One of the other things they talked about is, are we client ready, or are we trying to make clients housing ready? You've heard us talk about housing first concepts before, and I thought that was a really important thing. Here was one concept that we came out of I came out of one of the workshops, and I ran into Stacy and I said, you can't believe what they were talking about with transitional housing. And she said they're saying the same thing. Transitional housing is something you're very familiar with in our community because we do have organizations doing it. If you think about a typical apartment where you go sign a lease and you get you rent it or you buy it, that's permanent housing. Then we've got transitional housing, which is going to be up to 24 months. And we know there are a lot of programs in Sioux Falls that do transitional housing and have a history of doing that. Then we've got the shelters that exist, okay? So the 3 levels that are out there. Transitional housing is the current method that we see many things happening. And we sat through presentation after presentation with a lot of statistics that talked about the impact of transitional housing, the cost of transitional housing, and then they compared it to rapid rehousing, which is getting people in a permanent housing faster with shorter amount of time of supportive services. It would cost anywhere from about 20 to 25% of the cost of transitional housing, with better results. We were shocked to go through and see those statistics coming through. And that's going to be a challenge for us in our communities as we look at the funding that happens out there, whether it's HUD or whether there's other organizations that are funding those out there. But transitional housing is how it's always been done, but there are more cost-effective ways of going through and doing this. It's an expensive way to do business. There was one story that was told by one organization that hit home with me, and they were talking about the fact is they said, we've got these clients that we're working with for up to 24 months, they live with us, we've gotten them jobs, they're moving ahead, their kids are getting stable, all these things are happening. And then about 18 months into the program, the clients would lose their jobs. They didn't get fired, and they didn't get downsized, but they didn't have a job anymore. And as they started to have the conversations with people, trying to ask the question behind the question, what the client said is, we've never lived anywhere so nice before, why would we want to leave? Okay? We have to step back and ask and say, where are we moving people forward with, and how can we do things better? And the good news is that there are opportunities to be even more innovative and impactful, because we truly do have great resources in our communities. And how can we make those work, and how can we change the box that's on there? Stacy's just going to give you a quick summary of what rapid rehousing is, because you're going to hear us talking more about it, and we want you familiar with that term.
Rapid rehousing is a new way of thinking. It really is. Transitional housing has been where it's been for quite some time. All of our continuum of care dollars funnel through transitional housing programs. So it could be a huge obstacle for some agencies that receive a lot of funding for their transitional housing programs to step back and say, what do we need to be doing different? Heartland House, Baraka House, even St. Francis House has a transitional housing program. The concept with transitional housing is it's in a facility, it's a building. Rapid rehousing is completely different in the fact that it's going to use a scattered site location. It's going to be in apartments across the community, so different landlords, different rental companies, different property managers. And it's also going to be short term. So we're talking anywhere between 3 to 6 months. This kind of ties in with the progressive engagement concept. But really what we're looking at is providing you just enough to help you get back on your feet, and not any more than you need, and not enabling you to really become a cog in the system. We want you to move forward on your own. We want you to be able to take care of yourself. And so about 3 years ago, there were some stimulus dollars that came through. You might have heard about it. It was HPRP, or Homeless Prevention Rapid Rehousing Program dollars. That was geared specifically towards rapid rehousing. And it's been 3 years. All of the data shows that it's been very, very successful. We don't have the same data here in South Dakota because it hasn't necessarily tracked, but we can say that it has proven to be very, very effective on a national level. Families are staying housed 3 years in, 1 year in. So really just being able to say with 3 to 6 months worth of assistance rather than 2 years worth of assistance, you've made some serious progress. We provided the support, we provided the case management, we made sure that we were meeting your needs, we talked to you about what it is that you needed, and then we try to work with you to get that for yourself and get that for your family so you're back on your feet. So really it's a cost-effective way, it's even more successful than what we've been doing, and we would like to see it become a community priority. So then that gets me back to progressive engagement. Catherine Gale from the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness was one of the presenters, and she said it best. You can always add more seasonings to your soup, but once you've dumped it all in, you can't take it back out. That's exactly what progressive engagement is in a nice, succinct manner. Really what I'm saying is, I can throw everything at you, hope some of it sticks, some of it won't because you're not ready. But progressive engagement means I'm meeting you right this minute where you're at. I'm going to assess what your needs are, and I'm not going to offer you the entire platter of cookies when really all you needed was just a little snack, something more healthy like an apple to tide you over. So again, we like it because it's about self-sufficiency. I'm talking to you about how to make your family stronger, and we're going to do it in a less lengthy amount of time. So if you hear this catchphrase coming around, it'll be my new talk, progressive engagement. Sounds fancy, but it works. And on a national level, it's what people are talking about. And then this one I threw in, Carol and I love philanthropy, but sometimes philanthropy doesn't do what it needs to. I sat through a workshop a couple years ago, and we talked to some people in Calhoun County, which is where Battle Creek is, the Kellogg Company, and they had grants all the time. People could write grants, and their homeless problem kept getting worse, not better. And so then they stepped back for a minute, and they said, well, this doesn't make sense. We have all of this new funding. We have all these new programs. Things should be working. Well, none of the agencies were talking to each other. No, there was all kinds of duplication of services. People were going from one agency to another agency, not working. And if you were the person funding this program, you'd want to see success. So I took this quote. I love this. I sat through a presentation by one of the staff from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and he said, "We really like BHAGs." We're like, what's a BHAG? It sounds really kind of negative. And he says, no, it's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Something big, something monumental. Maybe it won't work. Maybe it'll be a disaster. And he gave a specific example. They put $5 million into a program, and the outcomes were not what they wanted. But they have a $40 billion endowment, so they have a little room to do that. We don't want to have to worry about that. We want to make sure. But if we're looking to engage the United Way, if we're looking to engage the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation, we need to be on our A game and show that we want your money, but we also know how to use it. And so that's really where this comes from, catalytic philanthropy. He used that phrase, and I thought that that is exactly what we're talking about, using our money, our resources for the best possible way. And there you have it.
One of the challenges that Stacy and I have been talking about in the community is how do we take our community and set the standard that no family should be homeless for more than 30 days. Now, you can argue the fact is that we should end homelessness, but you know what? Circumstances are circumstances, and there's always going to be things that are always going to happen that's out there. But we would love to see us become a community where we say, we don't accept people staying homeless, and we want to get them into permanent housing within 30 days that's out there. Stacy's going to take you through the next graph, and this is one that I hadn't seen us put together quite this way before, and it's one that, matter of fact, I've already heard from some nonprofits that she's been sharing it with, that it's a very visual way for us to understand what the cost is for families to stay housed in Sioux Falls.
So this first slide is basically telling us how much a 2-bedroom apartment is in the city of Sioux Falls. Housing and Urban Development tells us every year what our fair market is. This isn't low, this isn't high, it's just what it is. It's $681 a month. And when we talk about what people can afford, we always go somewhere in that 30% of what you're earning should be what you're paying towards your rent or your mortgage or wherever it is that you're living. So 681 is the magic number. I know not everyone needs a 2-bedroom, but our focus is on families, single-parent families mostly. And according to some of the research that we just pulled out, this data all comes from the National Low-Income Housing Coalition. It just came out a couple weeks ago, so it's 2013 out-of-reach data. And it says we have 32% of our households in Sioux Falls are rental households. That's a pretty big number. Not ginormous by any means, but still a pretty significant number of people. And if we have people that can't afford a place to live, and we have wonderful new job opportunities coming in, and people are relocating to Sioux Falls for jobs, we can't house them. We're just going to exacerbate our housing problem. Our homeless problem will increase. So here's some numbers. We're just going to rock through these. An SSI recipient, of which we have approximately 2,100 in Minnehaha County that are of rental age, could afford to pay rent at $213 a month. A minimum wage earner can afford about $377. $377. We don't have a lot of apartments in Sioux Falls that rent for $377, especially 2 bedrooms. And I'm not talking about subsidized units. I'm just talking straight up market rent. If I went out today to try and find an apartment, I'm not going to be able to find an apartment that's $377. Extremely low income household, this one is the one that's the magic number because our area median income, we talk about that number a lot. It's great. $69,800 for a family of 4 is our area median income in Sioux Falls. So everything else gets based on that magic number. And so 30% of area median income, which is where our families are that we're talking about, and if we reference back to our 2010 housing study that the city did, That's a huge population. That's one of the 3 categories that we were interested in providing more affordable housing for. They can afford rent of $524 a month. They're earning about $20,900 a year. $524. 2-bedroom is $681. And this is the last piece of the chart. This is what it looks like all together. I tried to make it zip in and be all cool for you, but this was the best I could do, was breaking it down piece by piece. So median income renters can afford about $1,700 a month. That's fabulous. And we're building those units. We have great new lofts coming in downtown and places around the community. And those are not the people I'm concerned about. Obviously, they can afford a place to rent, and they can even afford a 2-bedroom at fair market rent. But what about our families? What about our individuals that are earning $7.25 an hour, that are earning $8.50, that are earning $9.50 an hour, that are already working 1.5 jobs, 2 jobs, trying to stay afloat? How are we addressing that issue? And if we're really talking about finding solutions to our homeless problem in this community, we need to address the affordable housing shortage. And then this will wrap it up. This is basically the focus of outcome measures. For me, the bottom line is, are our consumers staying housed? And we call them consumers. They're individuals experiencing homelessness, families experiencing homelessness. Are they satisfied with the changes that they've made in their life? Are we seeing change? How about those high barrier families? When we talk about those as the ones that have probably some domestic violence issues, that have poor employment records, that have really shaky credit, that might have criminal backgrounds. We have all kinds of things going on in this state. We have a new directive with our criminal justice program and getting people out of jail or not even putting them in jail in the first place. How are they finding housing? And I know we don't always want to talk about that as a positive or a negative, but people need to be housed. And if they're working a full-time job, they should be able to afford a place to live. We did our homeless count in September, and that number said 55% of the people we surveyed that day were working full-time but homeless. If you're doing everything right, if we as a community are doing everything right, this shouldn't be a problem. So how do we track it? We need to be able to show the effort that we're putting in, that my job has validation, that the work you guys all do, that the work that our agencies and our nonprofits in this community are doing. So we need to come up with some outcomes. We need to have a system in place, and that wraps us all the way back around with our coordinated intake. We also need a coordinated outtake. So we need to make sure that what goes in comes out, and that we're tracking that data. Because these are people, and their kids are impacted, the school district's impacted, the community's impacted, homeless kids lacking stability. Really, we talk about this all the time, but every time a kid moves and they're homeless, 3 to 6 months of education gets lost. We have families in this community that move 3, 4, 5 times in a school year. Unacceptable. If we have affordable places for them to live, and they can afford to pay for it themselves, we have independence, we have a stable community, things work really well, and we can all move forward together. Oh, all right, well then I'll finish up. So really, I want to put this in perspective of, we started with doors, in and out doors, opening doors and unlocking futures. It's really what it's all about, because everyone has potential. No one is a waste. And as long as they're breathing, they still have hope to change. I would really like to see our community move forward with some of these things that we've talked about, especially assessments, especially putting in some of the new programming and really taking a hard look at rapid rehousing over transitional housing. And I'm asking you, as our leaders, to embrace this new wave of thinking and look at it and really just take it out there. I'd like the United Way to step on board with this and fund programs that are talking about outcome measures and that are talking about stability for the community, and they do a great job. And they also have $10 million that they get to divvy up. So it's amazing, and I do get to sit on that. I'm on a committee on that, and I love being on that. So just knowing that our community has all the potential. And this is the best community. I love Sioux Falls. So just being able to say, you know what, we need to address this issue too. It isn't all about economic development, but it is about economic development, because those jobs come in and they support everyone. And for every job we have out there, so even those $20 an hour jobs, they require people, because I'm going to go get my Starbucks and I'm going to go get my dry cleaning and I'm going to do those things. So I'm going to need people that are working those counters. I'm going to go get my dinner out. That waitress is going to help me get my needs met. She's going to need to have her job. and we're going to need to help her find a place to live because she's doing everything right. And even people who aren't making all the best choices still deserve an opportunity to find the right place to live and to move things forward. So I'm just asking all of you to consider this information. I know it's a lot. And just really keep this in mind when we're talking about planning and where things should go and what dollars are available, because our homeless population is just as important as any of them. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Stacy and Carol. Councilor Staggers?
Yes, Stacy, this information you presented us today was very informative. However, I guess I'm wondering, is there a whole lot that we can do as a city council or county commissioner? Or is this something you're going to be implementing more on your own internally?
I would like to see it as a community standard. So if the city council, I don't know how this works for you guys, but if there's a way for you to say, absolutely, we want outcome measures and we want coordinated intake, we're standing behind that, and obviously we have the Homeless Advisory Board that could make that be its focus. I need all of my community leaders to embrace that and step forward and say this is where we're going. So yep, my plan is to take it out into the community and unload it, but without dollars in it and without people saying, oh yeah, that's not just some crazy thing, that's a really good idea. It isn't going to go anywhere. So I would welcome any approval, excitement, talking about it, opportunities to speak, whatever will work, I'd be happy to do it.
Councilor Karski?
Thank you. Stacy, kind of got my attention when you talked about the centralized intake and all the different intake organizations that there are. How do you go about coordinating this?
That's a really good question. We actually have a group right now that has started. We about a year ago, there was a group of people that met at Citibank, and we talked a lot about system mapping. That's a catchphrase, system mapping, community collaboration. So we have a group right now that is actually focused on a training we did in November called Tenancy Preservation, trying to keep people housed. We are a group of city people, so we have like Clean Moran and Russ Sorensen and Officer Larson, and then some county people and some other agency people, and we're all working towards the same concept of what do we have, how do we make it work better. Coordinated intake is going to be a challenge because if I show up at Union Gospel Mission's door, where they go from there with their intake, I don't know. They're surely not calling and saying, okay. So being able to get agencies on board with that will be huge. And so we talk a little bit about what Councilor Stager's question, what do we do, how do we help? That's it. We need to have a community-wide meeting that says, yes, we all agree that this tracking system, homeless management information system, or the 211 should buy this new system and we'll help support it. Some way to do that. And along with our tenancy preservation programming, we're looking at something called housing court. There's not one in Sioux Falls. We have eviction court. We want housing court where we don't get people evicted in the first place. So when we talk about preservation, that's what we're talking about. And eviction is expensive. Landlords don't want to do it. They're $2,500 and plus the 3 months or however many months of rent that they didn't get prior to pursuing the eviction. So we have the South Dakota Multi-Housing Association. We have a property manager with Charisma Properties and a whole bunch of other people sitting around a table talking about this. Mental health issues keep coming up as a big challenge for landlords, so we're trying to address that. So just really, for me, it's systems mapping, making sure that we're aware of all the things that are going on, and then getting everyone on board to say, yep, I'm going to do that. I'll take care of that. The county does a great job. I mean, the county does almost $1 million a year in rental and deposit assistance. It's the starting place for most of the agencies. So if I come into the County Human Services office and I get assistance and I need a little bit more assistance, I could go to community outreach, I could go to Salvation Army, but I can't go to those places without having first gone to county. So that's kind of the same concept. Can we make the county be the original stopping spot? That's the intake place. And then it all goes out from there. It's a possibility. But again, people show up at St. Francis House, people show up at Children's Inn. we don't have data, and Children's is protected by Violence Against Women's Act, so their data is confidential, but they could still work with us. School district is also kind of out there because they have FERPA, which protects kids. So Tracy Jensen's on the Homeless Advisory Board, but she can't give out names, so we don't know. And something that we've really struggled with is tracking our chronic families. We tracked our chronic individuals pretty well. We built Safe Home. We got that going. We have chronic families that are just the same, but we're not talking, we're not sharing information, so some way to build that would be really where we're at. And I can smile and say, please, but there has to be some sort of impetus, something behind it that will make the agencies want to come on board, and that's kind of where the rub will be as we move forward.
Thank you, Stacy. Commissioner Kelly?
Well, a couple items. One's a point, and that's that I think we've failed to remember when we sit around passing these new international building codes every year that we make apartments more and more and more expensive to build. And until we start slowing down on that, we're going to continue to price these people out of business. The other question is, and I guess I got lost in the shuffle there, but we've got 3 facilities plus the Union Gospel plus the Salvation Army, frankly, that are providing some of these services, but they are on I think Heartland House is like a 2-year deal, is it, or
The
1 year?
transitional housing, yeah.
Is there a way that, I mean, if you guys can get together and talk without looking to the city and county to throw more money into this thing, but say this is you got to meet with, I guess, those people. Maybe you already have, but a clearinghouse concept is good, but I don't think that the first door they should walk in should necessarily be the county. I think if somebody walks in, perhaps there's some way that you can get that information to a central point so that we get a little better handle on it. But as far as asking them to walk into the county office, we're strapped for money. Right. And Safe Home is doing a wonderful job. It's all costing us $650,000 a year, and we're doing it alone. And I guess I would just suggest that rather than a radical, we should be looking maybe at fine-tuning and working our system where maybe Heartland House could be both a rapid rehousing and a longer term trying to get these people to understand how to have a household.
And the city does put money into the Bright Futures program, so there's dollars. There's dollars. The city and the county both are doing some effort, and I'm never going to negate the fact that Safe Home is a county effort, and it's done great, and the rent and deposit and all the other emergency assistance that funnels through Human Services is imperative to the safety of our community. It's very, very needed. However, there's more that we need to do, and with the nonprofits out there, we're looking at federal cuts all the way around. And so some of that is going to be meeting with the state, the South Dakota Housing Development Authority, and saying, you've always been doing this way, you've always rubber stamped these are renewals every year. Maybe we don't renew every year just because we renew every year. Maybe we say, okay, you know what, we're a minimum allocation state. South Dakota only gets $1.5 million. If $1 million of that's already going out in renewals, it doesn't leave a whole lot of room left for innovative programming. So it has to be all the way around as a state, as a community, as a county, that we're thinking about where our money is going. And again, I think United Way is a big player in this. So it has to be talking. And I'm working on trying to put together a community budget on how many dollars are spent on housing in this community. Sioux Falls Housing sent me their budget this morning. They have $13.3 million that goes out in rental vouchers and subsidies and project subsidized housing. St. Francis's house budget is about $575,000. We're putting a lot of money into Band-Aids. So what we're presenting today is really about solutions that work, that have shown to be effective across the country. And so if I come pitching, we need $1 million or we need $5 million, I promise to be a good steward of it. I'm not doing that at this point. But the money has to come from somewhere. And obviously I can go to private foundations, I can go to private people and ask for the money, but sometimes it's about taking the lead. And so when we talk about unlocking futures, that's really where it comes down to, is this group of people here, me, Carol, all the directors of the city and county agencies that have a hand in our safety and stability as a community. need to take a role.
Thank you, Stacy. Councilor Jameson?
Thank you. I'd just say that I think the first thing we need to do to solve any problems here is to curb your enthusiasm. I think you're doing a great job. You have an enthusiasm about this problem and solving it that I certainly admire. You and Carol as well, both of you. And I think if you bring back something to us that we could maybe digest a little better, there's a lot of stuff right here and probably isn't laid out in a way that we can, formulate it ourselves. But I think with your leadership, you guys can figure this out. And I can see that you do need some organization in all this, and I think we could maybe look at that later. But I just wanted to acknowledge your work and your enthusiasm. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, we'll go to item number 3. Thank you, Stacy. And thank you, Carol.
Item number 3 is Siouxland Heritage Museum Special Enterprise Fund Annual Report. Bill Hoskins.
So then just click it to the right.
Good afternoon. Bill Hoskins, Director of the Siouxland Heritage Museums. This is an annual report. The Museum Special Enterprise Fund was established as a revenue fund in 1995. It's a fund that's administered by Minnehaha County. It originally was established to receive revenues and account for expenses associated with the rental of space in the museum system, sponsorships, and in the provision of programs, events, services for which a fee is charged. The Enterprise Fund, over the last 5 years, we've, you never know exactly how it's going to turn out, but our income has exceeded our expenses in the fund. And that's been very helpful in view of the total budget of the museum. Our sources of income come from a variety of different places. We have the Museums Alliance, which is a private nonprofit friends group. They provide a cash donation, you might say, in direct support of some of our programs and activities. They also provide indirect support, funding our volunteer program and some other activities. We have the museum's endowment. We have an endowment at the Sioux Falls Area Community Foundation. It's the last time I had a statement, about $900,000. We get about 4% per year distributed. That money is, when it's distributed, comes into the museum's enterprise fund. That's where it's accounted for and spent and budgeted. Some of the endowment projects are multi-year projects, and so that is one of the reasons that frequently we have income showing, more than expense, because some of those projects take more than 1 year to complete, and we're really looking at a 1-year snapshot. Donations are another part of what comes in. Cash donations in support of a concert series or just money they leave in a donation box is accounted for in the Museum Special Enterprise Fund. Rentals, which is one of the reasons the fund was originally set up, is a big source of revenue in the Enterprise Fund. Other really accounts for those things that, mostly fees for services rendered. And that can be exhibit design projects that we do out on the side. It can be service requests, people like Applebee's who comes in and needs new photos of Sioux Falls for their walls. It's accounted for in the Enterprise Fund. When that revenue comes in, we look at it in a number of different areas, and same money, looking at it a little bit different way. About 22% comes in for our educational programming, to support the programming. About 14% in 2012 for our exhibitions program. That includes a grant that we got for an exhibit on the American flag last year from the Daughters of the American Revolution to help pay for one of those exhibits. Collections management and conservation. We restore a historic painting. That's coming in, usually money from the endowment, specifically for the conservation of a specific object. Rentals, again, and it's just a way, as you look at the pieces of the pie, our activities, a lot of revenue coming for rentals. Our expenses, looking at it in comparative, we're spending about 24% on education, about 9% of the money coming in on exhibits. Exhibits typically, education makes a little money, exhibits makes money, collections is another thing we're spending money on, rentals, and then you have other. And other looks like a big piece of the pie here. We have 2 of our full-time positions that are funded in part through the Museum Enterprise Fund. So they'll show up in the budget that you all get to look at, in our operations budget, as funded, but there's a line item which includes reimbursement. And so every quarter, the auditor's office takes out that portion of the money and reimburses it into the operations budget. But that's coming out of the enterprise fund as an expense. And I know I'm cruising through here, but in 2012, if you look at the actual expenses or the revenue sources that funded our operation, the enterprise fund provided about 10% of those monies for what we spent in 2012. The city about 43%, the county 46%. The reason there's a discrepancy in that is the maintenance budget for the old courthouse is somewhat bigger than the one for the Pettigrew. Otherwise, it's a 50-50 split between the city and county. And the museum store is putting up about 1% of the revenue. The enterprise fund has really become a very valuable part of our budget picture. The budget is something that this body approves annually. It is administered by the county, but I really think the enterprise fund not only encourages the museum to find ways to, well, be more businesslike and to generate income, but also reduce the taxpayer burden for the operation of the museum. I guess in the interest of time, if you have questions, specific questions about the fund, I think each of you got the full report written out there if you have any questions.
Thank you, Bill. Does anybody have any questions for Bill? Obviously, there's nothing wrong with cruising.
Okay.
Anyone have any other comments? Otherwise, I'd look for a motion to adjourn from the county side.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion unanimously passes.
On behalf of the city, a motion to adjourn.
So move, Entman. Second, Jamison.
Second by Councilor Jamison. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is also passed. Thank you so much. This meeting is adjourned. Make it a great night.